Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters. Welcome back to our weekly khalaqa, weekly meeting and gathering. And today, inshallah, what we are going to discuss and our topics is that our agenda is just mainly that why God creates evil and understanding results in will. And also this silent heart, why believers choose fleeting pleasures. Again, this week's our speakers is Colin Turner from the UK and Mustafa Akbulut from the US. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam ajma'in. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wa qul rabbi a'udhu bika min hamazati shayateen wa a'udhu bika rabbi an yahdharun. I seek refuge with God from Satan, the accursed, in the name of the God, the merciful, the compassionate. And say, O my sustainer, I seek refuge with you from the whispering of the evil ones. And I seek refuge with you, my sustainer, lest they should come near me. This is the ayah from Aminun, and we'll continue the seventh indication. Last week that we talked about the sixth indication, and since this is a little bit longer, that I will continue reading, and then inshallah, then when I stop, I'll turn the floors to our speakers, and you're welcome to have share your insights if you are interested in. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Seventh indication. Question: the Mu'tazila authorities considered the creation of evil to be evil, and therefore didn't attribute to creation of unbelief and misguidance to God, as if by doing they were exonerated him. They misguidedly said, man creates his own actions. They also said, a believer who commits a grievous sin loses his belief, for believing in God and affirming hell is incompatible with such acts. Out of fear at a minor prison sentence in this world, a man restrained himself from acting contrarily to the law. So if he commits serious sins, which infers disregard of divine right, it certainly points to his lack of belief. And yeah, just moving forward for the answers. Let me just ask this: uh, what the question is says clearly that it's a little bit obvious, but I'd like to listen from our speakers as well. Kolinabi, what would you like to say about this question so that we will understand the question really well?
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
First of all, the seventh indication, it's a long time since we began reading about the problem of evil. It's many weeks ago, but I remember after the first couple of sessions, we concluded that evil cannot be created, and that what Ustad is talking about when he says the creation of evil, this is taken from the Aqidah, the old Aqidah collections, which need to be unpacked properly. And we said that the evil is an absence, it's the absence of good, and it resides in the human intention. There is no such thing as natural evil. Earthquakes, floods, famines, disasters, these are not evil. They're all created. How can they be evil? However, they give rise to imtihan. And when Ustad talks about the creation of evil, what we should understand is the creation of the impact of evil intentions. So we gave an example that if I stick a knife in someone's stomach, um, it could be two scenarios. It could be me as a surgeon trying to help that person, or it could be me as a murderer doing away with that person. The action is created by Allah, but the murder itself is shar, and shar is not created. There is no divine name, al-qatil, for example. So hopefully that is cleared up, this whole creation of evil thing. The Mu'tazilites, they actually considered that evil was something created and that it's actually evil. Um, and so it seemed they didn't attribute the creation of unbelief and misguidance to God, though. This is the contradiction here. If evil is created, then who is creating it? But what they are saying in order to save their own skin is that unbelief and misguidance weren't created. And it's as though they are excusing Allah for, saying, oh, he's not evil. But at the same time, they're talking about the creation of evil is evil. But then they pivot, they swerve away from that, and then they say human beings create their own actions. And this is where, instead of now attributing the evil to Allah, they're attributing it to human beings. But we know that human beings can't create anything. So again, they're wrong on this. Man doesn't create his own actions. Man intends, and whatever his intention is, Allah, inshallah, creates the outcome of his intentions. So the what's happening here is that the Mu'tazilites are saying, okay, since man creates his own actions, then if a believer commits a grievous sin, an evil, then he loses the belief. He loses his belief because believing in God and affirming the existence of hell is incompatible with such acts. This again is wrong. We know that grievous sins may have an impact on our nafs. But believers commit sins all the time, even grievous sins, and they don't lose belief because it's just no one can create their own actions. It's impossible. No one can create evil. But the Mu'tazilites say, well, the creation of evil is incompatible with belief in God. But actually, sinning is not incompatible with belief in God. And then he says, out of fear of a minor prison sentence in this world, a man restrains himself from acting contrarily to the law. So if he commits serious sins, which infers disregard of divine wrath, it certainly points to his lack of belief. This is a kind of organic conclusion to their erroneous belief that human beings can create their own actions, including evil. And therefore, if they commit serious sins, then that points to their lack of belief. This is a nonsense. It's an absolute nonsense. That's my initial diagnosis.
Thank you so much, Colin abi. I would like to listen to Mustafa abi as well. Mustafa hocam.
Yeah, Assalamualaikum. Quinn Hocam has explained it pretty well, and inshallah, that we will see the answer of Ustad after this too. But a couple small points. One is indeed there are these two questions within this one question, right? The first part is about the um, evil, like man creates his own actions, that belief, and these are relatively deep topics, right? Like maybe 1,000 years ago, big scholars have been debating on these topics, but alhamdulillah, Ustad has explained these beautifully to common man like us. That's great. And there's a second part of this question as well, right? And then this is the sinning, right? The sinning and the relation of sinning with belief. If one sins, are you disregarding the divine wrath? And if you are disregarding divine wrath, does that mean that you are not believing in divine wrath? Right? That is, again, as Kohen Hajam said, it is a bit of a conclusion of man creating their own actions. But in any case, there are these two questions. I guess that's one point that I wanted to make. So, and inshallah, Ustad will answer these in order. He will, I think, first will answer the first part, man creating his own actions. And secondly, he will address this sinning and his compatibility with the belief. And and I forgot my second point. I was going to make a second point, but I think I might have covered it in my
Okay.
reflection. Yeah, Jazakallah.
Thank you so much. There is a question, Colleen Hocam, how do we define share? Because in the canons of Aqidah, it is said, "Khairihi wa sharrihi min Allah." So we can provide a clear definition. That's what the question is. I think that we discussed this 3, 4 weeks ago, but maybe that briefly you might want to just address again, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think to keep it very simple,
Yeah.
shar was understood in two ways. In Quran, it can mean damage. So, for example, the damage that happens in a flood. But it came to be associated with evil, which is an absence of good. Now, if we understand shar as damage, then there's no problem saying that, when a flood comes, it damages the houses, and that damage is created directly by Allah. If we call that evil, which I wouldn't, because there's no such thing as a natural evil. And if Allah is creating it, it can't be evil. But the damage, if evil is not evil but damage, sorry, if shar is not evil but damage, then to say that the creation of damage is evil is wrong. But if evil is evil, in other words, the absence of good, it's like darkness is the absence of light. Light is what is created, and the absence of it is darkness, and darkness is not created in that sense. So evil is exactly the same. So what Allah creates when I intend to murder someone, I do exactly the same thing that I would do if I were operating on someone in an operating theater as a surgeon. I put a knife in the stomach of a man, and he will bleed, and he will either survive or he will die. Now that's the same both whether I murder the man or whether I heal the man. One of those acts is evil. The murdering is the evil, but murder is an intention. The act is exactly the same in these two cases. The knife is the same, the blood is the same, the man is the same, the stomach is the same. Whether he lives or dies makes no difference. My action is evil, but Allah, my intention is evil, sorry. But Allah is the one who creates the outcomes of that intention. So I think I shouldn't say more than this because it will become too complex, I think.
Well, thank you so much, Colleen.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
and
clear.
I wanted to just add, like, there is in the answer to this first part of this question, there are actually pretty good examples as well that can explain this even further. So yeah, just want to say
Yeah.
that.
Great, thank you. So yeah, I'll continue the answer that the first part, inshallah. The answer to the first part of the question, as is elucidated in the treatise on divine determining, the creation of evil is not evil. It is the inclination to do evil that is evil. For creation of bringing into being look to all the results. Since the existence of one evil is preliminary to numerous good results by virtue of those results, the creation of the evil becomes good and is as though good. For example, fire has 100 good results, but if because they misuse their wills, people make the fire evil for themselves. They cannot say that creation of evil is evil. In the same way, the creation of devils has numerous wise results, such as human progress. So, if a person is defeated by Satan due to his misuse of his will and misguided inclinations, he cannot say that the creation of Satan is evil. For he did evil to himself because he was himself disposed to it. Yes, since the tendency is a particular relation, it has a particular evil results and becomes evil. But since creation looks to all the results, the creation of evil is not evil. It is good. The Mutazila didn't understand this mystery, so they said the creation of evil is evil and the creation of bad. And to exonerate the Almighty God of all fault, they did not ascribe to creation of evil to him. They fell into misguidance, wrongly interpreting the pillar of belief in divine determining, both the good of the it and the evil of it are from God. Okay, before we go to the second part of the answer for the second part of the question. So I like to hear that for the insights from our speakers, that what is that we need to understand or their insight, inshallah. Colin Abi, I'll continue with you again, inshallah.
This is very profound and it's very rich, but it also, the English needs to be worked on. I've always thought that when it comes to theodicy and comes to the discussion of evil, Ustad actually says that evil is Adam and Adam is not creatable. So I know Ustad's intention, but what he's talking about here, this is for a popular audience. And therefore, so if a fire, if my house catches fire and it burns down, then if I am inclined to say, well, fire is evil, but it's not, because I also use fire to heat my house. It can't be evil and good at the same time. So what Ostad is talking about is our perception of things of evil, which are evil, and that is contextual, because if an earthquake happens on the moon, no one cares, right? And you will say, mashallah, this is an ayah, this is a huge ayah, and people will photograph it and use telescopes to look at it and all of these things. But we know from bitter experience that if it hits a big urban center on earth, then lots of people die and it is considered to be evil. So this is perceptive. This is to do with our perception, and that's very personal. Um, you know, it's very, very personal. For the snake poison is its life force. For us, it kills us. So we say that's evil, but of course it's not evil. That's our perception. So the creation of the outcomes of natural, well, not natural disasters, but disasters that are out there in the outside world, such as floods and tempests and hurricanes and all of those things. The outcomes of them are created by Allah, and they're not evil, even though we perceive them to be evil. Because death is not evil. When people die in an earthquake or in a flood, Allah is mumit. They're not being murdered, but we will say, oh God, this is so evil, this is so terrible, this is so bad. So Allah is saying that the creation of the outcome of evil intentions, or the creation of things which people perceive to be evil that really aren't evil, then he is affirming that these are not actually evil. There are many goods involved in them. So he says here, fire has 100 good results, but if because they misuse their wills, people make the fire evil for themselves, for example, they leave the fire on in the house and their house burns down, they will call it evil, but where is it evil? Fire is fire, burning is burning, the destruction of the house, all of these things are created by Allah. Where is the evil? The evil is in the perception. And the same goes with shaitan. The creation of shaitan is pure khair, but people will say, oh, shaitan, he's evil, he's this and that. So what? His intentions may be evil, and the outcomes of his actions may be very damaging, but Allah created shaitan. So we can't say that the creation of shaitan is evil, even if all of his intentions are evil. Tamam.
Thank you so much, Colin Abi. Yeah, Mustafa Abi, what would you like to add to what has been said in the...
Mashallah, yeah. Mashallah, Kohen Hocam said beautifully, right? That perception is definitely a great way to look at this, right? Like sometimes we call it the big picture, right? Like as human beings, we may lose context, right? We may lose our big picture vision most of the time. And we kind of have this tunnel vision towards the things that are immediately happening to us and their immediate results. But those results may appear evil to us, right? Again, that, for example, someone, as Ramajam said, forgot something about the fire, whatever, and it burned their house down. But again, we are looking at that specific event and we see it as evil. But again, with the big picture, and especially if you tie it back to all the pillars of faith, right? For example, if you connect it to akhirah, right? Like in the world alive, there might be a perceived evil, but that might have, those all those belongings that you lost in that fire could go as a sadaqah for the akhirah, and all those good results. When you think about the big picture, when you think about all the results collectively, then you cannot say that whole event or that chain of events were evil, right? From that perspective, you cannot really say that creation of that event was evil, because again, when you collect all the results, when you look at the big picture, it wasn't bad. And if that thing, that specific event was not created in that chain of events, that would have been even worse, right? The situation would be worse. So leaving that bigger khair, not creating that small event, would be actually to abandon that bigger khair, bigger good outcome for the overall picture. So from that perspective, right, that perception, I think, is very important, as well as the seeing the big picture. And when you think about the big picture, Allah is creating, all khair. And the second point I wanted to make here, which also Kohen Hocam mentioned, is creation of shaitan, right? Satan and devils. And if if you think about it, like what could be closest to the natural evil, right? It could be Satan, shaitan, right? But even then, Iblis, even then, subhanallah, Ustad does not say that is evil, right? Because although, whatever it works is to lead people astray, but it is also, it is also imtihan, right? Test. It has become a means for Allah to test His servants. So from that perspective, it is not evil, right? Even again, what you may call closest to the natural evil is not necessarily is not necessarily evil. So from that perspective, I think it is important to see that um, you know creation of even what we may call closest to pure evil is not evil. Then what can we call anything that happened to us as evil, or how can we say that it was a problem, or Allah created something bad for us? So you cannot really say that. Finally, I would like to say, this is also similar to, like, if you ask students, are tests good, right? They will, if they are studying for the exam, then they're getting, having a hard time studying for it. They might say, yeah, the teacher is using this to torture us, right? He's trying to he's mean, and he's making these tests, and we need to take them. But at the end of the day, that is not the purpose of the tests, right? The purpose of the test is to see who has learned, who has actually done good in their studies, and to have that differentiating effect. And it would be a reward for the ones who have resulted, and it is a manifestation of adala, the justice at the end of the day. Because if there were no tests, then the students who have actually done good, have learned the subject, there wouldn't be any way to reward them either. So from that perspective, creation of tests are not evil. Again, if you're a student, you may have a different idea, but if you look at the big picture again, it is not bad at all. So in the same way, creation of evils, creation of Satan, devils, the whisperers of bad things, are not necessarily bad, because it is a means to test us. And as believers, inshallah, it helps us gain degrees for our hereafter, inshallah. And that's about it.
Thank you so much, Brother Mustafa. Yeah, there are some comments on the chat box, and I will read some of them as well. There's one question as well. There is no minor evil that within it comes a big khair. This is hadith narration with the meaning. That's coming from Bilen. And also, creation of devil is not evil. but devil, just Satan, is absolute evil. That is some kind of thing that maybe we can discuss a little bit. But there's another brother who asked, "Do you mean that share is relative, and then there is no absolute share? What prevents us from attributing share to Allah?" And then eh, iPhone 101 says, "Is the text saying something along the lines of the ends justify the means, or if non-existence is the represented by the evil, the pursued hardship of what appears to be evil is in fact not evil, so long as it leads to khair. Khair must then be that which exists. In fact, everything exists. So if the existence of any one thing, khair, leads to me to confirm this reality and leads me to my creator, it has been and stays khair in my perception. But if the existence of any of one thing, khair, leads me to rejection of God or his qualities or falsely attributing agency and damages my relationship with my creator, it becomes evil for me in my perception. Unless that experience also leads me to seek istighfar, perhaps. And also that Bilan says kibir, hubris is evil. It doesn't have to have an external reality to be assessed as evil. That's just something I wanted to read. And Kolinabi, do you want to add anything then after reading this? I don't know if it is clear that while I was reading on the phone.
I don't think so. I gave some responses in the chat, so I
Yeah,
think maybe that's enough.
May I add something, Abi? It's okay.
go ahead, please. Yeah.
Um, what I want to say is that the theodicee issue is not new. I mean, it has been discussed for centuries, and it still goes on in many stages. So, what Ustad actually, apart from how Ustad explains and states the issue, is very important because many people think the same way. I mean, not only the Muslims, even some Christians, even the other religion holders. Because we experience life, we see the borders between the khair and the shar. We can know by our conscience what is good and evil, what Allah likes and what Allah doesn't like. I mean, we can feel it in our hearts. We know when we commit a sin, and we feel when we do a good thing by the help of Allah. But the articulation issue is very important because we are here living in the last age, and the style, the expressions has become really important. So the Ustad's explanation of this issue with his with his statements, with the style that he used the sentences, I think that I think it's something that we should, I mean, like memorize and try to express it as Ustad expressed because it's very clear what he says. And when we diverge from his level of expressing, it becomes really, at least theoretically, very controversial because the understanding of the terms here at least differs for very different kind of people with their very different kind of intellectual background. So this style of expression is very important. But I wanted to underscore this thing. And second is that Ustad says that Adam is Sheremah. He says he doesn't say that evil is non-existent. I think this is very important to understand. He says that Adam is Sheremah. He doesn't say that the share is non-existent. I think we need to note it down if we can want to talk on this. And second is the Ustad says that share is ademi. Ademi means it is related to non-existence. It's classified in the side of non-existence, denial. I mean, it's infar, it's passive. It's being affected by external. I mean, it needs to be triggered by something else. And shar is ademi. Ustad doesn't say evil is adam, because we can really prevalent forms of evil in the world. We can see either intentional or I would say positive, outcomes. Physical outcomes. So this kind of difference is, I think, is important. I just wanted to stress this. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can I respond to that, please?
Please, yeah, go ahead, Colin Abi.
Yeah, Bilal and I have had quite a long history of discussion of this issue, and I think we're saying more or less the same thing. I think, as he says, it's just a matter of how it's articulated. When we say that shar is adam, it doesn't mean that shar doesn't exist. Shar has a wujud haqiqi. We see it everywhere, or we see the results of it everywhere. Like we see the results of the evil intentions of these genocidal maniacs, in America and Israel. This is shar. Of course it is. But we have to make a conceptual distinction between the locus of shar, which is in the intention, and the outcome, which is a kind of blossoming of that intention in created form. So we see people being blown up, we see people being crushed under, apartments, we see people, terrible things happening to them. But everything that happens to them is created. So how can that be shar? What happens is we focus on the outcome with, at the back of our mind, the evil intention. And therefore we see the whole thing as evil. But in fact, the only thing that's evil in there is the intention, and that is shar. It's really shar. But shar is the absence of good. So if I make a bad intention, it is shar because it's the absence of good. I'm not saying that it isn't shar. It is. But shar is the absence of good. When we say it's adam, it doesn't mean shar doesn't exist. It has a conceptual reality. It has a wujud haqiqi, but it doesn't have a wujud khariji. It can't have. And when we say adami, yeah, I would agree. There are things in which khair and shar appear to be combined, but they're never blended. You can combine things and they remain separate, but they're never blended because you cannot blend khair with shar or wujud with adam.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Colin Abi. I think this is right now. It's enough. If you guys want it, I'd like to continue the second part of the answer, inshallah.
Ali Çetinkaya abi, he wants to say something.
Okay, Ali Abi, go ahead, please. Yep.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum
A few sentences I want to share from the second point of the 18th word relate to the meanings of ahsana kulli shayin khalaqa. Inshallah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Second point from the 18th word. This point elucidates one meaning of the verse ahsana kulli shayin khalaqa, who has created everything in the best way, and is as follows. In everything, even the things which appear to be the most ugly, there is an aspect of true beauty. In everything, even the things which appear to be the most ugly, there is an aspect of true beauty. Yes, everything in the universe. Every event, especially about event, perhaps we can think about what event indicates. Yes, everything in the universe, every event is either in itself beautiful, which is called essential beauty, or it is beautiful in regard to its results, which is called relative beauty. There are certain events, especially about events, the explanation is continuing. Events. There are certain events which are apparently ugly and confused, but beneath that apparent veil, there are most shining instances of beauty and order. There are some examples, but I wanted to share only these truths. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alawi. That's great, really. Alhamdulillah. 18 words in أحسن كل شيء خلق. Inshallah, I don't see all of them from my phone, but I'll continue, inshallah, if there's no more insight. The answer to the second part of the question, how can someone who commits grievous sins remain a believer? Firstly, their error may be understood clearly from the previous indications, so there is no need to repeat it. Secondly, the man's evil commanding soul prefers one ounce of immediate present pleasure to a ton of postponed hidden pleasure. Similarly, he shrinks at the fear of an immediate slap more than at a year's tournament in the future. Furthermore, if the emotions dominate a person, they do not heed the reasons and mind. Desires and delusions govern in him, and he prefers the slightest, most trivial present pleasure to huge reward in the future. And he shrinks from some minor present distress more than from some terrible postponed tournament. For desire, illusions, and emotions do not see the future, indeed, they deny it. And if the soul assists them, the heart, which is the seed of a belief, and the mind fall silent and are defeated. In which case, committing grievous sins doesn't arise from the lack of belief, but from the defeat of the heart and mind by the predominant emotions, desires, and illusions. Moreover, as is understood from the previous indications, since the way the passions of the evil work is through destruction, they are extremely easy. Satans from among jinn and men quickly drive people down to that road. It's an astonishing situation, for according to the hadith, a light to extent of a fly's wing from the world of eternity is comparable to the pleasure and bounties of a person receives in his entire life in this world. Yet, following Satan, certain unfortunates prefer the pleasures of this fleeting world, which are a mere fly's wing in comparison with the pleasures of that eternal world, which are worth all this world. It is for these reasons that the all-wise Quran repeatedly and insistently and with encouragement and entreats restrains believers from sin and urges them to do good. I will stop here, and then I'd like to just hear from our speakers that for the second part of the questions, what are the answers or what they understood? And I'll start with the Mustafa this time.
Okay, inshallah. um, so this is actually an interesting piece about the humans' faculties. I think this is something that we may have discussed in some of our previous um, previous talks as well. But this is something that is not very well understood, especially in the Western context, right? Like there are different parts or faculties in human, like from nafs to heart to intellect. These are separate things, and there are things like hava, right? Those desires, illusions. These type of things are different faculties, different sides of human beings, and they are constantly in some sort of a clash, right? It is like heart, qalb, who is the seat of love and affection, but not in in the sense of the nafs does, right? Like nafs has a bit more animalistic desires, but qalb or heart has a more higher level, more subtle love and affection. In the same way, intellect is very much reasoning part of ours and very rigidly thinking about the bounds of reason, judging right from wrong from a rational point of view. But again, our nafs is like a child or even an animal that it may want to just want whatever it would like to get to. And there are, I think, within this constant clash, there is, and depending on the level of each other's arguments, I would say, one may win over the other in a temporary way. And in this case, it looks like, and there is this inclination of human being in the beginning, right? It says the inclination of avoiding present danger, or trying to get the immediate pleasure. But again, this is something our nafs is inclined to. And we there are all these even experiments like this famous marshmallow test, right? They give a kid, or they experiment with some kids. They say, okay, there is one marshmallow here in front of you. If you resist the urge to not eat this for the next hour, we will actually give you 10 marshmallows. Um, and most of the kids actually fail this test. Because that immediate pleasure of eating one marshmallow and not wait for the 10 that will come after that by waiting about an hour. And there are even certain, would see there are some even YouTube videos about this, where kids, like, they get their hand to the marshmallow and back, they reach out, and then you see that constant struggle, constant conflict within themselves, that their reason are saying something, but their desire is saying some other thing, from a reasoning perspective. So there's actually a clear indication, and Ustad explains it here, is that it is not that they don't know. And those kids, for example, they don't know, that they don't doubt that they will get those 10 marshmallows in an hour, but it's not necessarily their reason at that point that is dictating their work, right? It is their desire, there's their nafs, there's animalistic side. And this is the same thing, I think, from the sinning perspective. It's not that the believer, and one can be believer, their heart and their mind, their intellect can be true believers, but at the same time, that animalistic side of theirs, that desire from the nafs, havas, those can overcome, inshallah, temporarily, and then um, temporarily they can succumb to those sins. But inshallah, the hope is that it will become, as our one of our commentators said in the chat, inshallah, that will lead them to make istighfar and tawbah at the end. So it is, again, it can become higher, inshallah, at the end of the day. And finally, I would say, just to add, apart from whisperings of shaitan, waswasa, right? Shaitan does want someone to believe that they are not good believers, right? When they sin, especially after they have committed a sin, the shaitan might want to actually tell them, you are done, right? You are not really a believer now. Like, how can you stay a believer saying this? So that actually is a danger, right? That believing in that, and believing in that they are not salvageable at that point, is actually the bigger threat to one's own sanity and all that. And yeah, inshallah, that's about it, I would like to say.
Thank you so much, Mustafa. Yeah, that's it. That's a great explanation as well. Inshallah. I'd like to hear Colin Abi. The floor is yours, inshallah.
I could have carried on listening to Mustafa because his exposition was beautiful. There's not really much more that I can add because he's covered all of the bases. I will say that we have a very strange relationship with the things which are forbidden. And when we hear that someone has done something that is forbidden, we throw up our hands in horror. But actually, most of the forbidden things, not just Islamically, but also, for example, in the Christians have this idea of the 7 deadly sins. Most of them we do them because they're very pleasurable. We do them because we enjoy it. We do them because we have longings and desires and yearnings for things which these sins may reflect, but the sins themselves, the acts themselves, don't actually deliver what the person actually wants from that act. I didn't really explain that very well, but what human being, the nafs al-ammara, wants to maximize pleasure in any way possible. So when we embark on something which is forbidden, we do it for what we think may be an enduring gain. It may be a win, but it always turns out to be a failure. And this is showing us actually that we cannot derive perfect pleasure and joy in this world, and that our desires need to be redirected towards akhirah. So the things that which are forbidden because they will actually, because they are pleasurable, they will misdirect actually our desires and longings towards objects which are finite and transient. And that is the problem. So we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves, and Ustad is the perfect psychologist, spiritual psychologist in this regard. If you compare his approach with the approach of the Mu'tazilites, that if you do something, a grievous sin, then you are outside the circle of belief. This is a crazy idea. And as Mustafa, so beautifully said, this is a disincentive to people, because who wants to have this burden hanging over them the whole time, that if they put one foot wrong, they're going to be cast out of the circle of belief? Allah is Rahim, Allah is Ghafur. However, I would say that if the nafs overcomes the other subtle faculties of human being too many times and persistently, then the road opens to a weakening and possibly a loss of belief. Because if one becomes fasiq, and the fisq, the fisq here is concupiscence in English. Concupiscence means the tendency of the nafs, the tendency of the lower self to want things that it shouldn't want. And if we do that too often, then the heart becomes occluded. It becomes full of rijs, these black spots which fall on the mirror of our inner faculties. So we have to be very, very careful. But Ustad here is extremely measured in his approach. And he says that, sins do not take us out of belief. A good example, when I was a kid at home, my father said, you have to be in by 8 o'clock. And none of my friends went home at 8 o'clock. They all went home when it was dark at 10 o'clock. And so every night I'd go home at 10 o'clock and I would get into trouble. Now, I didn't reject the fact that he was my father, and I didn't reject the fact that he knows what's best for me. And yet I still did it. So my belief in him as my father and my belief in his wisdom were there, and yet I still did this. So it's like in the Mu'tazilite position would be, if you stay out one night after 8 o'clock and don't go home until 10 o'clock, this means that you don't believe that he is your father, and you don't believe that he has any rights over you, and he will have you adopted and you will have to leave. This is crazy. So Ustad here is a paragon of common sense.
Great. Thanks so much, Colin Abi. Yeah, these are great explanation. I think that I will continue reading one of the other paragraph as well, that this is going to be continuing. One time, the severe guidance of all-wise Quran gave me the idea that these continual warnings and reminders imply that believers are inconstant and faulty. They suggest a situation inconsistent with the man's integrity. For although a single order from his superior is sufficient to exact an official's obedience, if the superior repeats the same order 10 times, the official will be seriously offended. He will say, "You are insulting me. I'm not disloyal." However, The all-wise Quran insistently repeats the same command to the most sincere believers. At the time I was puzzling over this idea, I had 2 or 3 loyal friends. I frequently used to warn and remind them lest they be deceived by the machinations of the satanic humans. They were not offended at me, nor said I was insulting them. However, I used to tell myself and I was offending them, which these continual admonitions, and that I was accusing them of disloyalty and inconstancy. Then suddenly the truth explained and proved in the above indications became clear. I understood that the all-wise Quran's insistent repetitions were apt and exactly as required by the situation, and wise and not excessive of or accusing. They were pure wisdom and pure elegance. I understood too the reason those loyal friends of mine were not offended. A summary of the truth is this. Let's. I'm not going to read the summary, but I'd like to hear from Colin Abi and Mustafa Abi what this is really telling us. Colin Abi, this is your turn, inshallah.
I was gonna hope. I was hoping that you'd give us the summary of the truth, actually.
Okay.
It's like I gave you example, of my own example as a kid with my father. You know, he repeated this every day, and it wasn't excessive or accusing. And I later realized there was wisdom in what he was saying. Um, so he maybe got offended because he is human at the fact that I never came home on time, but I didn't get offended by him telling me that. Because he's my father, and of course the father's going to tell me that. I expected him to tell me that. So there's no need for offense here, because the exhortations are necessary, right? The advice is necessary. The admonitions they're necessary because we are forgetful. We are ahl nisyan. Insan is ahl nisyan, and we need to be constantly reminded. I'm hoping that the summary of the truth confirms this.
Thanks so much. Okay. Now I would like to hear from you guys, inshallah. Mustafa Abi, what do you think about
Yeah,
this?
I'll briefly say something, and then inshallah I'll let you do the summary of truth as well, so that Ustad also explains it. But I think my only point would be that it is a struggle, as I mentioned in my first reflections, is that and those admonitions are not necessarily hurting us or insulting us, but it is actually helping us in our struggle, right? In our struggle against our nafs, in our struggle against shaitan, against their whisperings, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that we are in this constant struggle and we will be in this constant struggle. And then those admonitions or those reminders will actually help us gain more strength in our fight against evil, against those desires, against those within those constant struggles that we are having. And from that perspective, it is not an insult, but is actually help, because what is against us is all about destruction, right? Like shaitan, like all the sins, whatever is about destroying what we have gained so far. So I think there will be in the summer of truth the example of building a house takes a lot of work, but hurting it or burning it down only requires a match, right? From that perspective, all the help that we can get to protect the house of Iman, I think would be greatly appreciated. But inshallah, I'll let you also read the truth summary of the truth, inshallah.
Inshallah. All right, thank you. The summary of the truth is this: since evil spirits provoke people in respect of the distraction, they commit much evil with the few actions. People who take the path of the truth and guidance, therefore, are in need of much cautions and great care, and repeated warnings and various assistance. For this reason, Almighty God offers assistance to the people of belief through his 1,001 names by way of those repetitions, and stretches out thousands of compassionate hands to help them. He doesn't slight their integrity, but upholds it. He doesn't belittle men, but shows Satan's evil to be great. O people of the truth and people of guidance, the way to be saved from the above mentioned vials of satanic jinn and man is this: make your headquarters to the school of the people of the truth, the Sunni. Enter the stronghold of the Quran of the miraculous expositions in contestable matters, and take the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam practices as your guide. Find safety and salvation. Okay, well, I just like to hear that after this reading the summary and then as well as the last paragraph that for the 7 indication. I like to hear that Kolinabi, we want to have add a couple more things that what you like to add. Go ahead, please.
Hojam, when Ustad speaks so eloquently and concisely as he has done in the summary, what can I say? What can I tell you that he already hasn't told us? I think it's straightforward here.
Great, thank you
May
so
I add
much.
something, Arvin?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think these texts are very profound and there are many different kind of gems in it. For example, the question was asked, about the kebair, the big sins. And Ustad doesn't start with something like that. These people are already bad and these are the very big sins, major sins. So Ustad doesn't take sides here, but we can see the manifestations of the name of Rahim here. And he just, when he talks even about the Kebair here, he says there is a desire, there are the illusions, there are the emotions, and if the soul, a system, and the heart and the minds fell silent. Look at the way that Ustad, acts as a judge here, for example, between the different kind of subtle faculties. Maybe you know how the courts, how to say, work. There is one how to say attorney for the victim or for the other side, and generally if someone commits how to say a crime, the government use all the means to prove him guilty, and if the person has one advocate, and the poor advocate, if you could find anything to save him, he can find. If he cannot find, he becomes the guilty there. But look at here how Ustad approaches to the question of how to say punishment and crime here. There's a whole subject as criminology, and the universities discuss this. But Ustad's approach is really, really unique. He gives some proportion to the illusions. Or even look, this is the kebair. He gives some of the share of the crime here to tevehüm. I mean, tevehüm is a faculty, and tevehüm is a faculty that belongs to which whom, and that some things Ustad takes a position to reduce the crime as much as possible and to save the believer here. That just got my attention, and I just wanted to share it with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Tawahhum is coming from the mind, and then heart is different, and emotions and desires. It's like you can think about that big airplane, and then so the heart and mind is going to be like a human being. We cannot stop the airplane by a human. So that is different. Maybe we can discuss inshallah later on. But let me stop here, and I will ask Mustafa. Do you want to add any other things that to this 7 indication, and then we can stop inshallah.
Yeah, mashallah, as Kunna just said, this is beautifully said. I think we also should remember that, Satan's dealings and it's very bad, and it's definitely, we should definitely have this tawakkul, but also to Quran's castle is so, and it is the example of the sunnah of the practices of the Prophet ﷺ. And these are great citadels for us to be in, fortresses for us to be in, to be saved. So the path is, inshallah, clear as well. So I guess not losing hope, as Planab said, we should not lose hope. La taqnatu min rahmatillah, from the rahmah of Allah. And then, have istighfar when we sin, but also know that there is that constant struggle, and we should get whatever help we need from the Quran and Sunnah the best we can, inshallah. And that's it, inshallah. Jazakallah.
Thank you so much. And I will invite Jasmine Abi to make the dua, inshallah, today. Then we will.
Mustafa abi can make dua, inshallah, the heir of Ali Çetinkaya abi.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have the text in front of me though. Jasmine, please go ahead. Jasmine, if you would like to continue.
سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا لا تخرجنا من الدنيا إلا مع الشهادة والإيمان آمين